Hi, Anne. So good to see you. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And how are you?
I'm very well, and thanks so much for joining me today for this conversation. Um, and for everybody watching, I think this is going to be an opportunity for Anne and I just to talk about this amazing concept of regenerative sustainability. You know, we've had a summer marked by a resurgence in the pandemic. We see ongoing economic uncertainty, political turmoil, and the kind of injustices that have been driving some of that and the social unrest. And of course, extreme weather events all over the world. And with all of that going on, sometimes I think it's easy to lose hope that we can make a difference. But you know, here at Royal Roads, we are so committed to inspiring people with the courage to transform the world. And for us, hope is connected to action. And that action is not just about reducing harm. What if instead of just reducing the harm humans are doing, we could actually contribute to the health of the planet? And so today with Anne here, we're going to talk about hope and also this amazing concept that I'm just learning a bit about right now called regenerative sustainability. Anne is a Royal Roads professor, and she's also the director of our School of Environment and Sustainability. She's also the program head for our Master of Science in Environment and Management. And she has a long list of credentials and accomplishments, which are much too long to include here. So I would encourage you to check out her page at royalroads.ca. So Anne, it's my great pleasure to chat with you today and to talk about regenerative sustainability. And I wondered if I could start with that question, just a very broad question about how you define or explain regenerative sustainability.
Well, first of all, I'd like to talk about, I think it's such an important topic for us at Royal Roads because we're privileged to work in one of the most beautiful landscapes I think there is in the country and one of the most beautiful universities. So, I'm just delighted that you have initiated this university-wide conversation on regenerative sustainability. So for me, it's quite simple. Imagine, Philip, if almost every action you take regenerates the environment. So regenerative sustainability essentially recognizes the interconnectedness between human and environmental well-being and focuses equally on both. But that also encompasses the ecological, besides the environmental or ecological, the social and economic imperatives and the personal imperative to act. If one is unhealthy, the other becomes sick, as I think COVID has shown us over the last year and a half. It emphasizes the goal of creating net positive outcomes in both human and environmental well-being, not just reductions in damage or harm, as you said in your introduction. So it's a very sort of positive, it's not a spin, but it's emphasizing how doing good in one just enhances the other. In other words, we have to ask ourselves, can our activities improve both environmental quality and human well-being?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Anne. I mean, because, there's a kind of mood out there right now, sort of fatalism that, these problems are intractable and they kind of just upon us in a way we can't really do anything about them. And so this kind of concept of being able to not only mitigate the harm done, but to be a source for regeneration, I think is very inspiring. And I wonder if you could talk just a little bit about how we could see this in action in our workplaces and in our communities and in fact in our everyday lives.
Yeah, and I think we have to be very, very careful because some analysts are now saying that the other side or the people that are against transformative change can no longer deny climate change, but they can make us feel hopeless, that there's nothing really we can do individually or collectively. So I think we have to be very, very careful about some of the new negative messaging that is coming through. So with respect to communities and neighborhoods, let's look at buildings, for example. We have moved quite seriously from making buildings more energy efficient to carbon neutral buildings, to carbon restorative buildings. And a very, very good example is the Sears building at UBC that benefits the community by giving energy back to the grid. It no longer takes energy from the system. There's an interesting Netflix movie. Now, it is a big project and it had a lot of money behind it, called The Little Big Farm. And it's visually very, very attractive because it shows you over time all the benefits of regenerative agriculture and how a landscape can change as a function of that. But I found it fascinating that in the end of that particular Netflix movie, it showed how regenerative agriculture actually gave greater protection to the farm from the wildfires that were raging all around it. So that's the net positive. There's all these benefits that we can't even anticipate until we start regenerating and revitalizing our environment. And so how the Little Big Farm did it was through the diversity and density of the vegetation used to regenerate the land. On a smaller scale, composting is a perfect example of regenerating the soil. You're giving back nutrients to the soil after you've eaten something. I really like that example because sometimes we, in our search for the big answer and the big solutions, we miss the meaningful small steps that every individual can be taking in their neighborhood, in their community. And what we could be doing nationally, hopefully, following this last election, they have the message from Canadians that we want them to collaborate. We need them all collaborating with one another to move forward and to show the way for regenerative sustainability.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Anne, and thank you for sort of talking about specific examples. Last question I have for you is just, with the pessimism out there, how do you personally stay hopeful? And what sort of signs are you seeing that make you hopeful?
Well, the first thing, Philip, on a personal level that I do is I try to go outside every day and just give gratitude for the landscape around me. If I don't go outside, I sort of get mired down with, all these reports and et cetera. But the regenerative sustainability is about celebrating life and vitality. It's a positive way of changing how we relate to our most important relative, nature, but also how we can actively revitalize our communities using nature-based solutions. So an example of a nature-based solution is simply working with nature. For example, no longer paving over, but building permeable surfaces not only decreases flooding, but is more attractive. It's more pleasing. I hope I'm explaining it properly. It's celebrating life and diversity. Regenerating road verges with biodiverse wildlife corridors with low-growing wildflowers. It's both pleasing to look at while driving and may slow us down a little, but it's also a garden for enhanced biodiversity. So focusing on net positive outcomes in human and nature well-being gives me great hope for the future. As we've argued since 1995, John Robinson and I, that we have enough science, enough information, and enough knowledge, and now new green technology to act now to thrive rather than merely survive.
Well, Anne, that's a great note to end on. And I just want to thank you for the conversation today too. And thank you for the leadership role you're taking sort of at the university on this issue and in sort of leading us through this conversation, which obviously, is going to, I hope, lead us to think differently about how we do things and really help us focus on the actions that will truly make that difference. And thank you so much for sharing your message about how we can actively exert a positive influence, on our ecosystems, but on society more broadly as well. So on that optimistic note, I wish you all a very pleasant and peaceful weekend. And as Anne says, get outside and appreciate everything that's around you. So thanks again, Anne, and great to see you.
Thank you, Philip.
Thanks.